Hello, viewers and podcast listeners. I'm your host, Miles, and you're tuning in at Xraised, where knowledge meets inspiration in the intricate dance of industry evolution. I'm thrilled you're joining us today because we've got a guest who's not just watching the future unfold, she's building it one line of code with her expertise at a time. Now, let me introduce someone truly remarkable. She's an award winning barrister with over 20 years of courtroom battles under her belt, an accomplished author whose work are part of Australian university curricula, and now a global thought leader in legal tech. From starting her journey in the New South Wales Supreme Court Library to becoming the most influential CEO in Legal Tech 2025, she's turned her decades of legal expertise into a vision for the future. And that vision is simple, yet transformative. Imagine a lawyer's perfect memory. Every case, every precedent, every principle accessible in seconds. Here's the legal mind and thought leader who bridges complex litigation with innovative intelligence driven solutions, the founder and CEO of MiAI Law, none other than Laina Chan. Hi, Laina.
Hi, Miles. How are you?
Great. How are you? It's great to have you back.
I'm good. I'm good. I wanted to talk about, how I always just like to talk about what I like to talk about.
I know.
I I went to this great talk last night that
Uh-huh.
was given by this professor of ethics and law from the University of Oxford.
Okay.
And they were talking about AI judges.
Mhm.
And what I found really interesting was that, yes, he had much more elegant language than I did. He had much more elegant language than I did when I published my article in the Law Society Journal. But, both of us ultimately believe that you cannot replace, you should not replace judges with AI in
Mhm.
all scenarios. But then he said, what if you have, he was saying you can't replace the judge in a trial situation, but that maybe in a case where you have a set of agreed facts and it's a simple, maybe it's a simple contract issue,
Uh-huh.
etc. Why can't you have an AI replace a judge?
Judge.
And the premise was he talked about rational autonomy. It was basically the idea that you want to give the litigants a chance to come to court to argue their case, and then for the AI to produce an outcome and reveal their and reasoning process. And he didn't think an AI could do that, but that's not true because you can develop an AI tool that can do all that stuff so that you can write, or I can write an algorithm where we have each party, you can upload your set of agreed facts, you can upload each party's submissions, and then I can write the algorithm where, in an unbiased one, where I step the model through a directed set of steps to reason through the facts, the legal issues, identify all the principles of law that the parties have identified in their submissions, and then step it all through and provide a reasoned judgment on the outcome. So
Mhm.
it's possible to do that. And then maybe one scenario is you can do that for very simple cases like that, where it's just
Mhm.
a question of, who does A really owe B that money under a contract? And it comes to an issue of just a construction of the contract, and the parties can agree the facts, then you don't have to worry about credibility issues and whether which witness should be accepted over another witness. And then, I mean, you could do that for very simple cases, and then you can still preserve the right of appeal to a human bench.
Mhm.
You can do that. I mean, but then when you're dealing with very novel case situations, novel arguments come up and novel case scenarios and novel then the AI would struggle with that because the AI is my AI anyways,
Yeah.
it's anchored in the past. So it can only
Mhm.
tell you how things have been reasoned in the past. And if you're coming up with a completely new argument,
Mm-hmm.
then an AI would struggle because if it cannot follow, if the judges, in order to reach a new outcome, a new create new law like they did in Australia in the Marble case, where they recognized Indigenous land rights, native title, and that was a break from all precedent, then the AI cannot do that. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I think in very simple cases, in very, very simple cases where then automated decision making may be possible, well, would be possible, but it depends on the algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
And Chief Justice Bell was concerned, and also the professor, John Tsoulis, was also concerned that the algorithms could not be revealed because it's all proprietary. But if I was to write an algorithm like that, specifically for a court, and they commissioned me to write the algorithm for them, I have no issue with showing them the algorithm that is being used to power the AI decision-making process.
Mm-hmm.
So there are ways. I mean, but you cannot use like just the language model, or just the language model by itself to do that for you. But I can definitely see a world where you can develop a tool that will answer the concerns of the professor last night in
Mm-hmm.
terms of rational autonomy, transparent decision making, the sources, etc.
Yeah. Well, that's a great reflection from the one that you shared with me earlier. It reminds us that justice isn't just about getting the right answer. It's about the process, the reasoning, and of course the respect for people being heard, actually being heard. And
Yes.
honestly, if AI tools are designed well, like MiAI Law, for example, they can totally help with clarity and transparency while still leaving their real creative leaps to brilliant human minds like yours. So it's perfect that today we're going to dig deep into building the perfect legal memory. And I think many of those tuning in, whether they're lawyers, entrepreneurs, or just curious professionals, are wondering what that really means and how AI can reshape not just research in general, but the very practice of law. So getting this started with maybe the big picture, Lena. When people say AI can give the profession a perfect legal memory, what does that really mean in practical terms? I'm asking because lawyers traditionally rely on case law and precedent, but human memory, even with good databases, has its limits, right? So how does AI transform this into something structured, reliable, and almost limitless?
There's always a trade-off between speed and productivity and cost.
Uh-huh.
So when you are using an AI tool like ours, there are limits set, and we don't return every single case that may be relevant on the issue because we have to make decisions as to how much we return to you
Mhm.
and which, and which cases would we return to you? Would we return high court cases or would we return district court cases? Decisions have to be made in order to get an output that you get in a reasonable time frame and an output that is targeted and not going to overwhelm you. So
Mhm.
decisions have to be made. So we will search through we will carry out the searches and we tell you what kind of searches we're turning, what answers we want to answer and what retrievals that we are doing, but decisions have to be made as to how much we retrieve because at the end of the day a judgment call has to be made.
Yeah.
Don't want the model to be running for an hour to troll through everything that can possibly be relevant and then writing a mega long memo that would just overwhelm anyone. So it's perfect memory, but maybe it's not perfect. It's like, well, perfect for the circumstance,
Okay.
I think, right? Because we just don't want every single buried needle
Uh-huh.
unearth, and we want something that's practical, efficient, and best suited for the job,
Yeah.
for the
Well,
user.
it's like creating a collective intelligence for the legal profession. I'm really fascinated by it. There's no principle, there's no ever principle be buried in a dusty law report again. I imagine that could completely shift how lawyers build their cases.
No, no, it can, but Miles, it takes a lot for the AI. It's not like people say, okay, yesterday I read
Uh-huh.
that LexisNexis came up with a very bold statement. They say that they have the largest database on of legal materials on site in the world. They're probably right. They're
Okay.
probably right. And they said that you give anyone $1 billion and nobody could reproduce their database.
Mhm.
Well, that's probably right because they probably have exclusive rights to a lot of these materials. So we can't get the license agreements to host those, to have access to host those legal materials, and that's probably right. But no AI can search 1 billion cases. So it just cannot.
Yeah.
So, so at the end of the day, we don't search primary cases. We have our own secondary set. We have analyzed every case that we say that we want to analyze, and we have created our own secondary database, and we search that. But we don't even, what AI can search 1 billion cases?
Mhm.
And what AI would want to do that? And that comes down to what I said before. Judgment calls have to be made about what you're searching and how deep you search. Because to search 1 billion cases, I mean, that's like decision making paralysis. You just, you don't, you have to, you could just keep searching forever and then never ever return anything productive because you're just so worried that there could be something buried in some dusty law report, as you say,
Uh-huh.
you know, and what if there is something out there? But always at the end of the day, as with a human being doing research, a judgment call has to be made as to how deep enough is deep enough.
Right. And I understand where you're coming from completely. And following on that, Lena, if lawyers suddenly have this not perfect but powerful memory at their fingertips, does it actually change how judges and lawyers think about precedent? For instance, could it force courts to confront cases they might have otherwise overlooked or even reveal inconsistencies across, say, past judgments?
Well, yes, it should lead to more informed decision making. It should, if a person knows how to use the tools properly, they should be able to unearth the relevant cases in support of their arguments. And then if your opposing counsel knows how to use the tool properly, they should be able to unearth the counter arguments and the cases supporting their arguments. And maybe, I don't know, but maybe it may lead to less litigation, but I don't think so. Because at the end of the day, people, the cases that end up in court seem to be the ones where the parties feel that they have something to prove. There's some principle. There's some that somebody feels that they have been treated unfairly, and they want to have their day in court. It's
Mhm.
not really the cases where it's very clear one person is going to win or not, or one person is going to lose. And sometimes even when it seems to be clear that one person's case is hopeless, but that person feels that they have really been treated unfairly, or something has happened where they just want to have their day in court. Those are the cases that actually go to court, in my experience. Because at the end of the day, out of 100 cases that may get filed in court, only 1.5 or 2%, I think the number is very, very low, that actually end up going to final hearing.
Mm.
And you will find that in those cases, it could be because there's some unfairness or some principle that someone wants to have aired in court, and or otherwise there's some novel kind of point of law that a party has the deep pockets enough to want to take that all the way. But there's usually always some kind of strategic reason why the cases end up in court.
Mhm. Right. So while AI presents the memory, it still takes a skilled lawyer, of course, to weave that into a persuasive argument. So moving along, I want to touch on opportunities, Lena. What new doors open for lawyers when every authority is instantly available and searchable? I'm thinking especially of smaller firms or maybe young lawyers. Does this level the playing field against big firms with endless resources?
Well, it helps, but then you still need the lawyer to interpret the results and to work out what to do with it. And some lawyers are better than others at doing that.
I see. Well, that's encouraging. I mean, instead of spending days buried in research, lawyers can focus more on strategy, persuasion, and ultimately serving their clients even better or at their
You
best.
still have to check, right? So you still have to check your work. You still have to verify the AI outputs, and that will still take time. And, as I said, we're putting in place tools and mechanisms to encourage the user to check. So, for example, if we notice that they haven't been following the hyperlinks of pinpoint reference, a pop-up box will pop up and highlight a particular hyperlink and say,
Mhm.
we've noticed that you haven't been checking your underlying sources. So that still has to be done. And you have to bring critical analysis to it. So law schools really have to do a pivot their teaching to ensure that the students know how to
Mhm.
and critically analyze law. I mean, that's what they're supposed to teach us anyway, but the way they teach it might have to be different. And
Okay.
you can't do it by avoiding AI. You have to. I mean, we talked about this.
Mind with it.
You have to embrace it because you can't just say, I don't want to acknowledge the new reality. You have to acknowledge the new reality and then work out how the tool is going to best serve you.
Right. In other words, less time with digging, more time thinking, critical thinking.
Exactly.
Uh-huh. But let me flip that around. If every precedent, Lena, is suddenly at hand, isn't there a danger of overwhelming courts and advocates with too much law? How do lawyers balance the power of having it all without drowning in it?
Well, because you still have to make that, it comes down to judgment. You're not going to run every single point. It still
Mhm.
comes to judgment and experience. You still have to work out what the best way forward to get your client the outcome that they're looking for is. And you have to remember that the bench wants you to find them the simplest path forward to the outcome that you want because nobody wants to be appealed and
Uh-huh.
the simple, straightforward argument is the one that generally is the correct one. It's
Mhm.
when you are having to really struggle to put together an argument. And if you are relying on really obscure precedent, then that probably means that that is an issue that has to be determined by the ultimate court of appeal, the High Court in Australia, for
Mhm.
example. But then you have to bring your experience to it and realize that the lower courts, the tribunals, the local courts, the district courts, even the single judge Supreme Courts are unlikely to be attracted to a very, very obscure technical argument, particularly if the merit of the case is not with that party.
Okay. Absolutely. That makes sense. It's a lot, but you're right. I mean, having the world's, say, biggest memory doesn't mean you use every detail. Of course, credibility still comes from focus and restraint. So I was thinking about cooking. Just because you have every spice in the pantry, doesn't mean you throw them all in the stew, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's quite impossible. Sometimes less is more. So,
that's right.
uh-huh.
That's right. And that's how the more experienced you are, and as you rise up through the ranks of being counsel anyway, that's what sets you apart to work out what works, what doesn't work, and what the best way to get the point across to the benches.
Mhm. I like that line. Let's go that. But here's one I think many will be curious about, Lena. If AI is preserving the entire past of the law, how do lawyers make sure they're still shaping its future? I mean, how do we avoid freezing the law in time instead of progressing it?
Well, that's why you need human judges.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
Because AI is based on the past.
Mhm.
And for example, the training date for OpenAI is the training cutoff date for OpenAI is 1 January 2024. So their knowledge is frozen at 2024.
Mhm.
And obviously, with tools like MiAI Law, we keep our database updated every day. So all the new
Every
cases,
day.
yes, every day. So we keep it up to date, but still, it's still anchored in the past. No
Yeah.
matter how updated your preset your database is, it is still anchored in the past. And in order to have true innovation and the development of new case law, new principles to fit the demands of modern day, you still need human judges who can bring that secret sauce to decision making to help the law develop and remain current.
Mhm. Again, memory preserves law, but human judgment progresses it. That's why you have to keep on
I
updating.
think so, because they will bring in place, well, some judges like to bring in the morality, the
Mhm.
public policy,
Yeah.
the norms of society, etc. I don't know. There are ways of using precedent
Mhm.
and then adding other layers and other considerations into the mix to help develop the rule of law. And the principle of is it stare decisis is that the law is always the law. So even though it's very weird, I've always thought it's very weird at law school. That you think that the law, whatever it is in the current state, is always the law. So you can overrule a precedent, but then the the current law of today is always considered to have been the law.
Mhm.
That's kind of a weird concept, but we always need to do that. So even though over time the law has developed, the
Mhm.
idea is that the new law has always been the law.
Yeah. Well, going
Isn't
back to
that-
the distinction that you mentioned earlier, it's very important because AI can assist, but it cannot replace the lawyer's role as an advocate for change.
That's right. And then it's also up to the judges to
Uh-huh.
what they're going to do with those novel arguments. And if the advocate has been really persuasive and to persuade the court as to why, the high court, obviously, it has to be the
Mhm.
ultimate courts of appeal who can do this, as to why the law should be developed in this way, then that is only a decision I think that can be made by humans. Unless you are programming into your AI, your algorithms, that not only do they take into account case law precedent, but they also take into account public policy arguments, which is often also embedded in legal reasoning and all kinds of other considerations that would not be found in case law precedent.
Mhm.
We're talking about two principles here.
Mhm.
You're talking about the principle of stare decisis, which is that a court is bound by precedent,
Mhm.
basically, stand by things decided. The court is bound by precedent. But at the same time, we know that over time, higher courts can overrule outdated precedent to
Mhm.
keep the law current and to reflect the norms of that day.
Yeah. Like a
Right. But then
soft
at the
dig.
same time, I have to dig deep. At the same time, I remember being taught in legal institutions back in first year law that the idea that judges do not make law, that they declare the law, they declare what the law has always been. And that was what I think Blackstone might have taught. So there is a slight tension between the the principle of stare decisis and the principle of what Blackstone says is that judges are there to just to declare the law. But we know, as a matter of practicality, that the law evolves as time goes on.
Uh-huh.
And that evolution, I think, can only be done by humans. That maybe AI can be there. I mean, AI can be there to determine judgments based on precedent. right? My AI can definitely do that. But I mean, our research reports definitely do that. It's all reason from first principles. You upload it, your set of facts, and it will do the research, a reason from first principles, and give you the answer based upon precedent. But if you want to develop the law, and if you want to create a new type of law, like in Australia, Mabo, where the High Court developed the concept of native land title, and Justice Kirby was saying at the talk last night that Justice Dawson was the one judge in the minority, and he reasoned from the basis of precedent, and he said and he found that there were no native law rights, no native land title rights, but the majority decided that there was, and they were able to reason their way through that. And I think and Justice Kirby said that is, can AI reach such an outcome? And John Tasoulis gave an example of, is it AlphaGo, which is the machine was developed by IBM to play chess, and it came up with a novel move that won the chess game. But that depends. I don't know what the algorithms were that were used to power AlphaGo, but for my AI, I don't think we would do that because we can't do that because I have only programmed it to rely upon precedent to reason its way to an outcome. So if you want to make sure that the law not does not remain static, then I think you need human advocates to assist the court in explaining to them why it's a good idea to overrule precedent or to develop precedent, and for the bench, the human bench, to bring their own judgment and experience to it to decide on a case-by-case basis whether the law should be developed and in what way.
Mhm. Well, good thing that there are AI tools like MiAI that is thoughtfully designed systems and can support transparency while leaving genuinely creative, principle shaping decisions to human judges. Well,
I think so.
thank you,
Can't
Laina.
replace.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
that detailed explanation. And I'd like to highlight once again that MiAI Law is not about replacing lawyers. It's about empowering them, making justice more accessible, research more efficient, and arguments more focused. So thank you so much, Laina, for giving us another glimpse of what's possible when tradition meets technology. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Miles.
For our viewers and listeners who want to learn more, you can explore Elena's groundbreaking work at myai.law or connect with her and her team through MyAI Law's LinkedIn page. Whether you're in practice or just passionate about how AI is reshaping industries, their resources are an eye opener. We'll be including some links below for you to explore more. And
Mhm.
that's a wrap for today's episode of Xraised. Thank you, everyone, for supporting us and for letting us raise conversations like this one that matter. Until
Mhm.
next time, this has been your host, Miles. Stay focused and inspired with Xraised.